Hello students, I am Dashrath from DP Bhosle College, Koregaon. I welcome all of you in this Rose project run by Rayat Shikshan Sanstha, Satara. Today we learn 12th standard English subject poetry section. In this section, poem number 3, The Inchcape Rock. The poet of this poem, Robert Southey. So let's begin with icebreakers activities. First activity, prepare a word register related to marine life. Here, one model example is given, sailors, another ship, tides, winds, anchor, captain, submarine, port. These are the words related to marine life. Look at next activity. The functions of a lighthouse. The first function of lighthouse is to show the direction. Next one, to warn ships about treacherous rocks. And the third one, to sound foghorns in times of poor visibility to warn ships. These are the functions of lighthouse. Next activity. Discuss in pairs the various famous rocks in the world and mention the places where they are. In the first column, famous rocks in the world, and in the second column, place of that rock. Here, Balancing Rock in India, Mahabalipuram. Next, Ayers Rock in Central Australia. Another, Giant's Causeway Rock in Northern Ireland. And the fourth one, Sigiriya Rock in Sri Lanka. Next activity. Discuss in pairs and groups the following expressions. Take the help of your teacher. Here, first expression, as ye sow, so shall you reap. B. Crime gets its own punishment. C. What goes around comes around. D. Tit for tat. And E. Evil digs a pit for others but falls into the same. All these are the idioms and proverbs. And from this poem, this message is given. That message we want to learn from this poem. About the poet of this poem, The Inchcape Rock. The poet Robert Southey. He was born in Bristol, England. He was the son of a draper. He completed his education in Westminster School and Balliol College, Oxford. He has written many poems. He was a poet laureate in England. His well-known poems, The Scholar, The Battle of Blenheim, Bishop Hatto, and the Inchcape Rock, etc. These poems were very famous in the school children. Now, about this poem, The Inchcape Rock. In English literature, there are many types of poem. For example, sonnet, elegy, ode, epics, and ballad. This poem is a ballad. What is a ballad? A ballad is a song that tells a story, and it can be dramatic, funny, or romantic. All of you know, in our country India, many historical ballad. What is the story of this poem? The story of this poem of the 14th century about of Aberbrothock, means priest. He installed a warning bell on Inchcape. This is the story of poem. The place of Inchcape Rock. 11 miles, 18 kilometers of the east coast of Angus, Scotland, near Dundee and Fife, occupied by the Bell Rock Lighthouse. Students, all of you understand the particular place of this Inchcape Rock nearby the country Scotland. Theme of the poem. This is the legendary story of a pirate who removed the bell on the Inchcape Rock placed by the abbot of Aberbrothock. The message of this poem: those who do wrong things will meet with due punishment. Here, in the first part, today we learn first 8 stanzas of this poem. A learning poem for the enjoyment. If we read this poem with proper tone and intonation, we can easily understand the rhymes and rhythm. We can enjoy the poem. So let's begin with the poem. Listen carefully, student. You can understand all these things of this poem. So I begin with first stanza. No stir in the air, no stir in the sea. The ship was as still as she could be. Her sails from heaven received no motion. Her keel was steady in the ocean. Without either sign or sound of their shock, the waves flowed over the Inchcape Rock. So little they rose, so little they fell. They did not move the Inchcape bell. The abbot of Aberbrothock had placed that bell on the Inchcape Rock. On a buoy in the storm, it floated and swung, and over the waves, it's a warning rung. When the rock was hid by the surge swell, the mariners heard the warning bell, and then They knew the perilous rock and blessed the abbot of Aberbrothok. The sun in heaven was shining gay. All things were joyful on that day. The seabirds screamed as they wheeled around, and there was joyance in their sound. The boy of the Inchcape bell was seen, a darker speck on the ocean green. Sir Ralph the rower walked his deck, and he fixed his eye on the darker speck. He felt the cheering power of spring. It made him whistle, it made him sing. His heart was mirthful to excess, but the rower's mirth was wickedness. His eye was on the Inchcape float. Quoth he, "My men, put out the boat and row me to the Inchcape rock, and I will pluck the abbot of Aberbrothok." So these are the 8 stanzas of the poem. After listening paraphrase of this poem, you can understand the story of the Inchcape rock. All these things, related to good person and evil person. In the first stanza, the poet described the calmness of the sea, the air, the sea, the ship, all were still. The sails of the ship were getting no motion from the wind. Its keel was steady in the ocean. The waves were rising and falling so little that they did not make any sound. The waves were gently flowing over the Inchcape rock without moving or ringing the bell. The abbot of Aberbrothok, a very good person, priest, installed the bell on that Inchcape rock. During the storms, it floated and ran widely. The high tides alert everyone that the dangerous rock was there. The bell guided the mariners in the bad weather. They could hear the ringing bell and went away from the dangerous rock. So they blessed the abbot for his good job. In the 5th stanza, the poet delivers a cheerful atmosphere on a particular bright day. Everything looked joyful. The seabirds were screaming in joy. Sir Ralph the rower, he was a pirate, a criminal background, and the captain of ship. The Inchcape rock was a black spot in the green ocean. He went on the deck and gazed at dark spot. Ralph was delighted of spring. He was whistling and singing in joy, but no one knew that sinful thought behind his happiness. His eyes were fixed on the floating boy. Ralph ordered his crew to take the boat to the Inchcape rock. Then he said, "He is going to destroy the good work of abbot." So this is the paraphrase of the poem. I think all of you understand half story of this poem. Now, in this poem, 9 figures of speech used in the first 8 stanzas. Here, figure of speech alliteration and use of alliteration in 10 lines. No star in the air, no star in the sea. The ship was as still as she could be. Third line, without either sign or sound of their shot. On board, in the storm, it floated and swung, and over the waves, it's a warning run. When the rock was hit by the surge swell, and then they knew the perilous rock. The seabirds screamed as they wheeled around. His hurt was mirthful to excess. And last line of alliteration, quoth he, my man, put out the boat. These are the examples of alliteration. Then, simile, another figure of speech. The example of simile, the ship was as still as she could be. Use of as. All of you learned all these figure of speech in the 11th standard. Third one, personification. Example of it, the ship was as still as she could be. Her sails from heaven received no motion. On board, in the storm, it floated and swung. And the fourth example, all things were joyful on that day. Another figure of speech called inversion. Example of inversion, her sails from heaven received no motion. On board, in the storm, it floated and swung. Third example, and over the waves, it's a warning run. A darker speck on the ocean green. And the fifth example, quoth he, my man, put out the boat. So these are the examples of inversion. Then use of antithesis, this figure of speech in the line, so little they rose, so little they fell, rose and fell, opposite ideas. Another figure of speech, repetition. No star in the air, no star in the sea. So little they rose, so little they fell. It made him whistle, it made him sing. So, in every line, the word repeated. Next figure of speech, transferred epithet. Example of it, the sun in heaven was shining gay. Next figure of speech, onomatopoeia. It made him whistle, it made him sing. And last one, synecdoche. His heart was mirthful to excess. So all these examples of figures of speech used in first 8 stanzas. In this poem, use of archaic word. First 8 stanzas, 2 archaic words used by the poet. Number 1, word blessed. This is the old English form of blessed. And in our day-to-day life, we used a prayer calling for divine care. All of you familiar with the word blessing. Next archaic word, Quoth, Old English form of said. This form used only in first and third person singular before the subject. And the meaning of this quote means said. Here, say, speak. All of you familiar with all these synonyms of this archaic word. In this poem, poet Robert Southey used imagery. Two types of imagery the poet used: visual imagery and sound imagery. We can easily identify the examples of visual imagery. First example, the ship was as still as she could be. Next one, her keel was steady in the ocean. Next one, the waves flowed over the Inchcape rock. Next, the sun in heaven was shining gay. And last example of visual imagery, the seabirds screamed as they wheeled around. All these are the lines indicate visual imagery. Second type of imagery, sound imagery. Here, and over the waves, it's a warning rung. There was giants in their sound. And the third one, the seabirds screamed as they wheeled around. These are the examples of sound imagery. In this poem, the use of rhyme scheme. All the stanzas, the same rhyme scheme. But here, we take the example of the first stanza. First stanza. Every line's last word. First line's last word C. Second line's last word B. Third line last word motion. And fourth line last word ocean. So here a rhyme scheme of the poem AABB. So this is the rhyme scheme of the poem. Okay, thank you. We stop here.